Clemson, Florida State, that brings back a lot of memories for college football fans down through the years. The two get together in Tallahassee this Saturday. We got Jason Priester on the line, as we always do, from allclemson.com. So you know the drill. Get on over there to allclemson.com on SI. Check out Jason's work, especially this week with the Florida State game coming up. Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How about you?
I'm good. So I guess before we get into the 2022 matchup, when I say Florida State, what do you think of? Or when I say Clemson, Florida State in particular?
The first thing that I think of?
Yeah.
Ruski back in the 90s, Bobby Bowden,
Yep.
the big fake punt. I mean, probably one of the most famous plays in all of college football, and then Clemson kind of going back down there the next year and giving it back down, getting a little revenge on them. But that's the first thing I think of. But still, one of the most storied rivalries in the ACC over the past 15, 20 years, the Bowden Bowls and then Clemson's rise over the last 10 years. Florida State kind of falls back to the pack a little bit. But, when these two get together, generally, it's pretty good football games. Obviously they've been the occasional blowouts here and there, but these games are usually competitive. Neither team's going to have a problem getting up for one another. I remember talking to Jamie Robinson in Charlotte at the ACC kickoff, and he made it pretty clear to me that they have not forgot about the game in Clemson last year, that they thought they let one get away from them. And I think he told me 3 times, we're going to see them this year. We're going to see them this year. We're going to see them this year. So I don't think either one of these teams is going to have any problems getting up for this game Saturday night.
You know what I think of is just kind of the overall arc from about 2012 to 16 or 17 and how all that played out. Just to watch from year to year it transition from Florida State's the king and Clemson's getting better. But Florida State would still smack them down. They would have the game of the year in the ACC, and Florida State 2012, 13, 14 just kept keeping them down. Then 2015, of course, Clemson breaks through, but it's still a really good game. 2015, 2016. So Florida State's still right there. But of course, Clemson went to a national championship game, won a national championship. And so then they started to separate themselves, but Florida State would still make it a game. And then by 2017, that was, of course, Jimbo Fisher's last year, but it was still a competitive game. And then Florida State just gone. Clemson takes over, and just to see that transition over a period of time was kind of interesting for me to watch.
Yeah, it has been interesting to watch. I won't ever forget that 2014 game. That's a game Clemson should have won, and just gave it away. I remember DJ Howard rumbling for, I think it was 2014. He's rumbling for a touchdown down there, just drops the ball. I mean, just fumbles. It just drops the ball, and anything that could have went wrong that night. That was kind of the night that Deshaun Watson took over as quarterback in his first year. Seemed like Clemson was never going to get over that hump. It was just always one thing after another. And then, like you said, 2015, they finally, the tide started to turn, and here we are. Clemson's won 6 straight, I think.
Yeah, so like you say, Jamie Robinson says we're waiting for him. We know that the date is marked on the calendar, so here we are. We have finally arrived, and Florida State gave them a game last year for the first time in a few years. Kind of a messy, sloppy game, but for the first time in about 5 years, watching that game myself, being neutral, just wanting to see good football, I actually made it a point. Okay, I'm going to watch Clemson, Florida State, because I think this year it might actually be a decent game. It wasn't the most spectacular game in history, but it was hard fought, and it was down to the wire, and Clemson had to pull it out late. Jason, when you look at the performance against Boston College, the only thing that kind of stands out to me in regards to maybe getting your feedback would be that even though it finished up, was it 31-3?
Yeah.
Was that the final? It took a long time to get to 31. It was sitting at 3-3 forever. And so it took this offense a while to get churned up.
Yeah, it was almost like Clemson was going through the motions a little bit in that first half, particularly on offense. They got the ball first, marched straight down the field, DJ hits Bo Collins for a 30-something yard touchdown pass, drops it right in the breadbasket, and he drops it. And it seemed like it just kind of took all the wind out of their sails, and it took a little while to get back. And like you said, it stayed 3-3 until right before halftime. Clemson put together a drive, goes up 10-3. Boston College gets the ball coming out of half. Clemson forces a 3 and out, and they immediately score another touchdown, go up 17-3. And that's all she wrote. But, you can't do that. You go down to Doak Campbell, and that kind of environment, the game's already sold out. You better not be going through the motions in the first half and let a couple plays here and there take the wind out of your sails, because this is a team that can beat you if you do that.
Yeah, they're much improved. I don't think there's any question about that. But they still have some ways to go and some work to do. They had this 3-game stretch that really defines their season: Wake, NC State, Clemson. Now, they have failed the first few tests, but they were down 3 touchdowns to Wake. They made it a game in the fourth quarter. They almost had a shot to come back and win that game. Then NC State, they pretty much just blew the game in the second half. Really close game in Raleigh-Durham. Had a decision to make, to go for the field goal with a struggling field goal kicker or go for the kill shot at the end zone. They get picked off at the end zone, so they lose a close one to NC State. So considering what Clemson did against Wake, which, shoot, that was a flip of a coin toss-up game, but really controlled the game against NC State, using those two as barometers, as the two best barometers on the schedule for either team. Clemson obviously handled business against those two, and Florida State couldn't. So it appears going into this that Clemson's still decidedly the better team.
Yeah, and I think Florida State's a little banged up on the defensive line too, which really hurts. And I think Clemson's offensive line is really starting to gel and really starting to play better. And despite the slow first half, I thought they played really well in the second half against Boston College. Still need to be a little bit better running the ball, but the pass protection has been excellent for the most part. But, you look at this Florida State team, and as well as they started off, they're still giving up over 150 yards a game on the ground. This is a game Clemson's got to be able to run the ball in, and that's going to be one thing I'm going to be looking at. Can they run the ball against this defense, a defense that's allowed some yards on the ground so far this season, and a defense that's got a banged up defensive line, like I said, unless I'm missing on them getting some guys back or something. I haven't really checked into that yet. It's still so early in the week, but, I know they have been banged up. And not only that, the way they lost that North Carolina State game, that really had to be one of those. You're up 14-3, you're in control, you knock the quarterback out, and you still find a way to lose that game. Like you said, I know they got a field goal kicker who's really struggling right now, and they had an impossible decision to make down there, but that's the one thing you cannot do is throw an interception in that spot. Jordan Travis throws it, and they lose the game. I mean, that was just a heartbreaker. That's one of those games that sometimes you see we'll get a team beaten twice. It'll be interesting to see how they bounce back from that, especially coming off the loss to Wake too.
Yeah, when you mentioned Florida State along the defensive front, Fabian Lovett is one of their best defensive tackles on the inside. He's missed the last few games. And then Jared Verse is a bit of a monster, kind of like Jermaine Johnson of last year, leads the team in sacks, has kind of taken his spot. Not that he's kind of shown that kind of NFL draft stock, but a really good player. And he's been banged up, and his status for this weekend is still up in the air as well. Clemson Sports. Yeah,
those are two big losses, and Mike Norvell's not been there long enough to really build up the kind of depth that let's say Clemson has along that defensive line. They've been without Xavier Thomas, Brian Rasee, Tyler Davis at times this season, and you just got another guy you can plug right in there. And Florida State's not quite there yet, being able to do that. It's only been his third season or fourth season now, and he'll get there, but I don't think they're there yet. And those are two big losses. When you lose two guys like that along that defensive line, it's going to hurt.
But you can catch Jason's appearance on our Florida State live show coming up Wednesday at 6 o'clock Eastern time. We're talking Florida State Clemson for a full hour. Jason would stop by for 15 or 20 minutes, break down the Tigers for us. All right. Yeah, the weekly DJ check-in in terms of his progress and so forth. Did he pretty much go in line with the rest of the offense? Slow start, but started to kick it in the second half?
Yeah, like I said, after that first drive in the first half, I thought that, they kind of just were going through the motions. DJ was off on a couple of throws. I mean, not nearly anything like we were seeing last year, but his accuracy was off a little bit. Seemed like the whole offense was a little discombobulated, so to speak. But he started to settle in the second half. Really made some nice throws to some guys. Found Joseph Nagata late in the first half on a touchdown. Found Brandon Spector on a beautiful throw on a touchdown late, and I think he had a career. I think he had 74 yards rushing. I'm pretty sure that was a career high. Broke off a 40-yard rush there at the end. He's really becoming a factor in the running game. He, like I said, he's never going to be 75-yard guy week in and week out. But if he can pick up those 4 or 5 yards in a tough spot, that's what Clemson needs him to be, and he's been doing that the last 3 or 4 weeks. But yeah, I thought DJ played well for the most part. Like I said, a couple of throws off here and there, but yeah, he's still playing just as well as he has been all season.
Got Jason Priester on the line from allclemson.com on SI. Get on over there. Check out Jason's work as you get ready for Clemson, Florida State coming up on Saturday night. I believe this is an ABC game at 7:30 Eastern time, kind of like the old days.
Yes, it is. This is Clemson's third ABC game in a row at 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night. I tell you another thing that's been interesting to watch over the past couple of days is the point spread. It opened up at 7.5. It quickly dropped to 4.5. By Monday morning, it was at 3.5. It was almost like Vegas knows something the rest of us don't know. I know if I was a gambler, this is a game I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole.
Well, yeah, man, that's a huge point spread move. That's like a quarterback kind of decision where you find out, okay, a quarterback can play or can't play. There goes the line. It's going to jump 4 points. Wow.
I know. I don't recall the last time I saw a swing that big, that fast, and can't really explain what it is. Like you said, you usually only see that when a quarterback's going to be out or something, and I don't know of any quarterback that's going to be out, so it's very odd.
Okay.
Very odd.
Well, let me ask you about this, and you have yet to take in Dabo Sweeney's weekly press conference, but of course, they have played a game since 2020, but just to refresh everyone's memory, COVID, of course, canceled all sorts of games and rescheduled all sorts of games in the fall of 2020, including the Clemson trip to Florida State, and Florida State kind of late in the process deciding to cancel the game that they weren't meeting their protocols and didn't, for whatever the terminology that was used for the cancellation of the game. And Clemson was already en route, and it was a big fiasco, and there were money figures thrown out about how much it cost Clemson. And you're thinking that's going to be brought up at some point this week.
Oh, I'm sure it is. That game was canceled less than an hour before kickoff, if my memory serves right.
Was it really?
Yeah. I think it was I'm pretty sure it was a noon kickoff, and it was after 11 when it was just canceled. Clemson was already in Tallahassee. It was the day of, and Clemson had a player that ended up testing positive after they got to Tallahassee. The test came in after they got to Tallahassee. They had followed all the protocols coming down, took extra buses, even more buses than was recommended by the ACC. So they had followed every guideline the ACC had in place. Florida State still wouldn't play. And Dabo Sweeney, he said this game was not canceled because of COVID. COVID was the excuse for why it was canceled. And, he really wouldn't let it go for a while. He was not happy that they made that trip down there. And he kind of intimated that the reason the game was not canceled was because Florida State knew they were going to take a beating. So I would fully expect it to be brought up at some point this week. Dabo Swinney had his presser this morning, and I wasn't able to catch it. I don't know if any of the local guys asked him about it, but he doesn't talk to us anymore the rest of the week. But I'm sure it will be mentioned at some point, at some time, because it was such a big story. I mean, it was even brought up at the ACC kickoff in 2021, the following season. So I'm sure we'll hear about it at some point, because he was hot and he did not let that thing go for a little while. And usually when he's hot about things like that, he usually lets them go pretty quick. This was one he did not let go.
Yeah, well, that Florida State team was a mess in 2020 outside of a upset against North Carolina. That's an awful team and an awful season, as opposed to an ACC champion that beat Notre Dame in the title game by 3 touchdowns and went to the playoff. Just a typical Clemson team. And then I remember hearing about, obviously you're wasting all sorts of people's time, and there's people in addition to the team traveling down there, and you waste all this time, and it costs us like $300,000 to take a trip with all these people.
I want to say it was 350 if my memory. I don't know. My memory is not what it used to be, but I think it was 350 is the number that was tossed around. I might be wrong about that, but yeah, that Florida State team was not very good, and I want to say they had been hit really hard with COVID issues too. So, I kind of get it, but if you're going to do that before you make the team travel, 8 hours down there.
No doubt. I didn't realize, well, I did at the time, but I'd forgotten that it was that close to kickoff. Wow.
Yeah, I remember I was on the way to where I was going to watch it when I found out it was canceled. So, I mean, it was that close to kickoff.
Well, we hope to get the game in on Saturday night. It would be a shock if we didn't. So no foreseeable issues this time around with Florida State hosting Clemson. Jason Priester, all Clemson, going to join us on Wednesday night on our Florida State show. Yes, we've got a Florida State show, Clemson fans. It's over on the FSU channel here at the Voice of College Football, Wednesday at 6 Eastern time. All right, Jason, appreciate you stopping by.
Yes, sir. Talk to you Wednesday night.